almost 11 o'clock a.m. in Madrid, Spain. I'm Estela Landrove, and here with me is my colleague, Estela. Good morning. Welcome, everyone, especially people joining us from all over the world. Welcome. Thanks for joining us in this auditorium from the ONCE in Madrid that has been specially outfitted for this occasion. Yes, Susana, because right now we are about to be visited by Her Majesty the Queen of Spain in order to officially inaugurate the World Blindness Summit 21 promoted by the World Blind Union, by ICVI, and by the Grupo Social 11. So we will be giving you an idea of what's happening right outside this auditorium. The Queen has just arrived. She will be greeted by a delegation of the highest ranking authorities, also from the civil society representatives and of the representatives of the World Blindness Summit. She just arrived. There's the mayor of Madrid, the president of the region, Madrid, and the presidents of the Senate and of the Congress of Representatives in Madrid. We have about 25 degrees centigrade temperature, but all of them are attired very elegantly. And it's very important, actually, that for blind people and people with low vision, we can give an idea of what's happening. Thank you for describing this to us. Well, we're just at the basis of the stairs, and they are now getting organized for a photo shoot, also with Miguel Carballeda and the president of the Community of Madrid. This is going to be the official picture. I'm going to describe the auditorium. We are at the center in front of a rostrum. Here, people will be talking on all the topics of interest during this event. But what is especially striking is that this is like a big eye. You see, first we have the photo shoot, and we have an iris in the center of the scenario of the stage that mimics an eye, and the colors will be changing along the way as we proceed. Now, let's move on. We're just following the Queen and the delegation. The Queen is extremely punctual, as is her habit. Let me remind you that the World Blindness Summit is about to start with over 4,000 people registered from 150 countries worldwide, thanks to a accessible platform that is fully accessible, globally speaking. Now, as I said, the Queen is arriving, and during this event, we'll have with us many high-ranking authorities and others that can't be present, but that didn't want to miss out on this. And we have also a letter from the UN General Secretary that says, I'm sending my best wishes to the World Blindness Summit and to the Global Forum on Technology related with disability. Many people, including blind people, have realized that during the pandemic, they couldn't fully use the potential of what exists in society. Now, this is what he said, and in the end he said, United Nations does support your efforts towards our common goal in agreement with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The UN started reinforcing the commitment with this goal 2 years ago in favor of people with disabilities, even and especially in times of crisis. And this means working hand in hand with people with disabilities and their representative organizations. And finally, Antonio Guterres says, together we can and we must deliver on the core promise of Agenda 2030, leave no one behind. And in this spirit, let me wish you the very best for your Congress. So thank you very much, Susanna, and thank you also to the General Secretary of the UN, Antonio Guterres. And while everyone gets settled, let's just wait for a minute and we'll get started very shortly. See you in a little while.
Majestad, autoridades.
Your Majesty, officials, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the world's largest gathering of blind and visually impaired people, united on a single platform to discuss their future. More than 250 million blind people from all over the world will look at Spain over the next 3 days to participate and to see the results of this World Blindness Summit, Madrid 2021, which will mark the future of these people in the coming years. More than 4,000 people are registered in this summit. They represent associations of the blind from 150 countries around the world who are looking at Madrid today as the center of their world. Greetings to those of you who are present here and to the thousands who are following us on social media and online. To begin this great world meeting, we ask Her Majesty the Queen to address a few words to us. Thank you, Estela. Thank you, Susana. I am going to be very brief. I just want to welcome you, presidents, minister, ambassadors, authorities, president of ONCE Social Group. I want to greet those of you who represent the world of people with disabilities, all of you who have signed up to this World Blindness Summit Madrid 21, and those of you who follow us on streaming.
World Blind Union, the International Council for Education of People with Visual Impairment, and of all the organizations that play an active role during these days in presenting and proposing reconstruction and recovery policies in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as for the private sector strategies and for civil society's general awareness. Lo que va a suceder entre hoy y el miércoles en el marco de esta cumbre.
What will happen between today and Wednesday in this summit is so important that we cannot even calibrate at this point. There is not a single relevant issue that this summit leaves out. We are going to talk here about inclusion, employment, innovation, transformation, accessible and usable wearable technologies, leisure, culture, sports, mobility, full participation of people with visual disabilities and with multiple disabilities in all the aspects having to do with their life. A lot will be spoken about education. How much should it matter to each one of us present here today, the fact that somewhere in the world, a girl or a boy has no access to training or education? Well, there are many million people like this. This is the regard that doesn't want to leave anyone behind. And this concerns us all. So thank you for inviting us and considering us. The World Blindness Summit Madrid 21 is already a success, and it will be a great success in the next following days. I wish you the best. Thank you.
Gracias, Majestad. Durante las 3 próximas jornadas, los representantes de la Unión
Thank you, Your Majesty. In the next 3 days, the representatives of the World Blind Union and the International Platform for Education of the Blind, ICEVI, will discuss the issues that most concern and worry these people, both in more advanced countries and those who have it a little more difficult. We will talk about basic hygiene and health conditions to the incorporation of new technologies. Susana, the future of millions of blind people in the world would be debated, and it will be done from Spain, the country of the ONCE Social Group, which is the co-organizer of this summit, and whose president, Miguel Carballeda, will now address a few words to us.
Buenos días, Majestad, autoridades, queridos invitados, entre los que se encuentran empresas, entidades.
Good morning, Your Majesty, officials, dear guests, amongst whom we have authorities and other stakeholders who have helped us make this possible. In order to improve the people like me, people with blindness all over the world, there are around 285 million blind people. It is not easy to be blind. And we can improve to the best of our ability their future. This is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk mostly about education so that they can have a better future, so that we can have a better future. We're talking about our children's future. And we can do this thanks to civil society in Spain, which is always standing by us. They've always made right by us. Out there are many people who need a hand. We're still living in the midst of a pandemic, although we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel, if I may use this expression. More or less at 11 with 11 minutes, in many streets and squares in large and small villages, in large cities like Madrid, we see a particular phenomenon, which is the following. People from the civil society, along with the keepers of hope, come together to share precisely their hopes. And thanks to that, to those events that happened at 11/11, we are able to organize something like this from ONCE to help the blind people from all over the world. We want to be allowed to participate and give our opinion about our own lives, about what we want for our future. We don't want anything about blind people to be decided without blind people. And this is exactly what we're doing here today. 151 countries have registered. 4,107 people connected. We wanted to do it in person, but the circumstances haven't allowed us to do so, and we actually had to postpone this summit a year. But we're doing it with full commitment. Thank you to all the people, individuals, businesses that have helped us to fulfill our commitment with the WBO and with the ICEVI. We will continue our commitment with people with blindness, but we will also continue our commitment with the people in our country to whom we give back everything that we raise, all the funds that we raise in the streets. Some way or another, we always give it back to society. I think we as people with blindness, make our contribution to society, always with commitment, with loyalty, in a very positive sense. I was born in this country, and I am proud to be blind and to have been born here and to live in the country of the ONCE. Sometimes we are too critical with our own country, but I do believe that we have stories we can share with the world, and that those stories will help the world to be a better place. You know what our Lotto sellers do in the streets, as we call them, the guards of hope? Not only do they sell responsible games or responsible betting, they listen, and the art of listening is no little thing. We had a pandemic already in our society, which is the lack or the problem of isolation and loneliness. People are lonely. We are lonely as well. The elderly, the blind, we are alone. And people like us step out of their house, they go buy bread, and then they come to our sellers to talk to somebody for, I don't know, a few minutes. Some of them have no one else to talk about for an entire day. And then when they say goodbye, our lottery sellers tell them two things: thank you and good luck. For 10 years in my life, I was also a seller. I sold lottery tickets, and I always said, thank you and good luck. And those are important words, and they are important for the times we're living. They're important for those who have helped us. And this is what I want to tell the authorities and those who have helped us today. Thank you, President of the Senate and the Congress. Thank you, Minister of Inclusion, Social Security, Immigration. Thank you, President of the Madrid region. Thank you, Mayor of our city of Madrid. Thank you, Secretary of State of Social Rights. How important it is to count on social rights and to have obligations, the obligations that go along. How important it is. I want to thank you, each and one of you. Your Majesty, I'm going to say it again. At that time, I could still see a little bit. Now I can't see at all. But you visited the Center of Education Resources of the ONCE here in Madrid. The need of our boys and girls more than anything, because they show more curiosity, who wanted to know what a princess was like, because you were a princess at that time. They came all together. The security staff was worried. I was worried as well. And Her Majesty told us, don't worry. The blind boys and the blind girls particularly were able to touch her clothes, her face, her hair. They were able to touch a princess. And some of them still remind me of that today. They are no longer girls, they're older. And they tell me, oh my God, that was unbelievable. We were able to touch our princess's hair. Please take care, because we're still going through a pandemic. We only have one life. There's no plan B. And for that life, we only have two eyes, sometimes less. Please remember that not all of those whose eyes are closed are sleeping. Not all of those whose eyes are open can see. Now, the two words of our lotto sellers to make this possible are the following, all in Spain and from me to you. Thank you and good luck.
Muchísimas gracias, Miguel, por esas...
Thank you, Miguel, for your heartfelt and loving words, because the reality of people with blindness in the world can and must change in many ways, like you're saying. For example, it is not acceptable that half of the world's blind boys and girls do not have access to education. How important it is that blind people have access to education to be able to forge their own future. In fact, these days, other issues related to education will be debated. There is a debate about the access of blind children to mathematics. For that, we'll now give the floor to Francis Gentle, President of the International Council for Education of People with Visual Impairments, ICEVI.
Excellencies and authorities, President of UNTE, President of the World Blind Union, regional presidents and committees, delegates, participants and sponsors. I join my esteemed colleagues in welcoming you to the World Blindness Summit. ICVI is proud to partner with UNTE and the World Blind Union in presenting our first virtual summit and assembly. The International Council for Education of People with Visual Impairment is the world's major global association of individuals and organisations concerned with education for children and youth with blindness, low vision, multiple disability and deafblindness. In the 2018 World Development Report, the World Bank identified education as essential in building human capital and national prosperity. Education enriches lives, raises aspirations, and promotes quality employment and quality of life outcomes. However, as we are all too aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has created the largest disruption of education systems in history. The United Nations noted in August 2020 that the COVID-19 pandemic is worsening existing education inequalities by reducing the opportunities for children and adults with blindness and other disabilities to continue their learning. ICEVI and our partner organisations are committed to supporting the efforts of the United Nations, national governments and key stakeholders to build back better after the pandemic. We are promoting implementation of education laws and policies that respect, protect and fulfil the right to education for all children, including children with visual impairment. Activities of our international members and local partner organisations have included information sharing and networking using the ICVI global and regional websites and social media platforms. Advances in inclusive digital technologies have supported the creation of open access publications, resources and training materials, which are available for free download on the ICVI global and regional websites. Resources include instructional mathematics videos, a startup teacher training curriculum, joint ICVI WBU position statements, and other ICVI publications, and the COVID-19 responses of ICVI's regions of Latin America, Africa, and West Asia. One significant disruption caused by the pandemic was the postponement of our in-personal World Blindness Summit, which was to take place in Madrid in June 2020. We extend our sincere appreciation to ONCE for working with us to ensure a spectacular program of virtual events. Thank you.
Capacidad de ser capaces en todos los ámbitos de la vida. Es por lo que
The ability to be capable in all areas in life. This is what we are struggling for inclusion, like Frances Gentle was saying, but also for employment, autonomy, accessible technology, access to culture, to leisure, to sports. For this and to tell us at a world level, we will give the word to Diane Stenson, President of the World Blind Union, who is here with us. Don't worry, we will wait for her because she is with us in person.
Your Majesty, colleagues, partners, friends, good morning from Madrid. Good evening, good night to all participants in the World Blindness Summit. This is a very different joint ICVI-WBU General Assembly and a very different World Blindness Summit than was anticipated when it was decided to place the World Blindness Summit in Madrid. We all thought we would come here, come together to bond, to share, to talk, to laugh. And the COVID pandemic has made this not possible. At the same time, this event has been organized in a world of crisis, and many blind and partially sighted persons are right now fighting for their rights. The right to health care, the right to vaccination, the right to safe participation in societies and in life. And we have all suffered losses. The WBU survey on the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on blind and partially sighted people have showed how blind and partially sighted persons worldwide are facing increased sense of isolation, prejudice because we can't keep the distance required, and difficulties accessing basic services. Many have lost their sense of livelihood, their possibilities to make a living. Many have lost their place in education, and we need to stand together to fight this. The General Assembly is made possible here because UNSE has worked tirelessly to convert what should have been a physical meeting into a virtual meeting. This enables us all still to meet, to spend the next days dealing with the matters of WBU and ICVI and learning from each other. I think we should take just a short moment to applaud UNSE for this huge effort they have put into putting together the World Blindness Summit under very difficult circumstances. So please join. Thank you. Since we met at the 9th WBU General Assembly in Orlando 5 years ago, many things has happened. We are faced with new struggles as blind and partially sighted persons. The struggles that we already knew continue to be there. We are still working to ensure human rights for all. Access to products, access to services, education, employment, and access to technology, which is so important. Look at us here. We are also working hard to ensure equality and diversity in the World Blind Union. And I have to say, I feel very proud and very happy that 3 of the 5 newly elected members for the new table officers of WBU will now be women. I think we've come a long way, and of course we still have a way to go. We are faced with some improvement. We are now 5 years into the SDGs, the world goals for us. We still need to see some progress, but they're there and they are for us to work with. The UN has adopted a strategy for disability 2 years ago. UNICEF and UNESCO have already adopted strategies for education for all. And globally, the disability movements have been strengthened. Disability is on the global agenda, but we still have a way to go. We need to create alliances, we need to strengthen our alliances, and we need to increase the financial strength of WBU and ensure a good, robust organization with impact. Now, Nelson Mandela once said, when people are determined, they can overcome anything. I think that saying should also go for our organizations. We need to be together. We need to strengthen organizations of the blind and partially sighted at national, regional, and global levels. We need to continue to move on together and change what it means to be blind. Now, once again, for this event to happen, it could only be realized through the great achievement of UNSE and of the collaboration between UNSE, ICVI, and WBU. It has required resources, dedication, and commitment from everyone involved. Resources which UNSA has so generously shared with all of us. Your Majesty, colleagues, friends, let us take this incredible opportunity to learn, to share, and to strengthen the foundation of WBU and all organizations supporting what it means to be blind. Thank you very much for joining the World Blindness Summit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana, for your words. Yours are the words of over 250 million people that worldwide are either blind or visually impaired. So thank you so much for being here in Madrid, representing the World Blind Union. Thank you so much for your work. I'm going to describe what just happened on stage. Up to now, we had a rostrum on stage that has been done away with. And now we will be seeing on stage a few chairs, a few coffee tables. But now let's move on to a video, because we have people who didn't want to miss out on this occasion. Among them, Josep Borrell, High Representative of the EU Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. Dear Majesty, friends,
it is at the forefront of an international movement to bring justice and equal opportunities for over 285 million people in the world. So congratulations to the organizers and to Grupo Social 11 for the persistent leadership on opening new doors for blind people in Spain. This is a great example of a vibrant and courageous civil society. I would like to endorse the efforts of creating a new vision of blindness in the world, to ensure equal opportunities and full participation of people with disabilities. Because, unfortunately, discrimination and social stigma are still a painful reality. Equality of opportunity and inclusion are principles under high stress around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has created an unprecedented social crisis. Blind people, as other people with disabilities, have particularly suffered from the effects of social isolation, lockdowns, and economic consequences. The pandemic has also drastically accelerated digitalization. And this development offers many opportunities, but at the same time, we must guide it to ensure an inclusive transformation. A transformation that eliminates all barriers without creating new ones. The pandemic has also had a devastating effect in low and middle income countries, particularly for people with disabilities, and we have to work for their full participation and involvement. That's why the European Union promotes and protects Europe's fundamental values around the world. These include full equality and inclusion to people with disabilities, and to be successful, we need to work side by side with the world's civil society. In this spirit, I fully support today's online meeting of blind and low vision persons, and wish all the success and productive World Blindness Summit 2021. Thank you for allowing me to participate on it. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Sin duda son palabras destacadas.
Surely, these are very significant words that show the commitment of the institutions vis-à-vis equality in the most ample sense of the word, starting with real opportunities that blind people have to claim their rights and to be part of reality in capital letters. Let's now see a video on domotics and technology that holds so much potential.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the accessible home, to a space adapted with domotics to give a better quality of life to people with blindness and with other disabilities, leisure, culture, education, artificial intelligence. Alexa, please turn on the dishwasher. All right. Alexa, turn off the washing machine. Alexa, turn the TV on. To improve the experience of visualization for people with different disabilities, we have incorporated technology to our TV. When we talk about smartphones or TVs, well, we work on that. And also in 3D printing, or to access daily living through maybe your kitchen. This is a leading solution for blind users. We would like to be part of the solution. This is perfect technology to complete the indications that we write. The Marrakesh Agreement has been wonderful for us. Along with this, Entertainment Zone Interactive Entertainment is committed to creating a more intuitive and accessible world through all tools that we can for our PlayStation community. This toy is designed so that boys and girls in every schoolyard can play together without discrimination. And this is an example of how toys are an element of socialization that can then be translated to other parts of entertainment and of life. Accessibility is not only possible, but is necessary. People with blindness can and should be able to do everything that we want to undertake. 285 million people deserve a more inclusive world. If you like this video and would like to know more, you can visit ONCE's YouTube channel. There you can see an entire program or in these topics. There is another one in which Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Microsoft explain their advancements, thinking on or having people with blindness at the core. I would like to give the floor to Susana to start a debate on innovation and social transformation. Some orientations for more inclusive societies. Okay, thank you very much, Estela. We have 3 chairs and 2 small tables on stage. I'm going to sit on the chair that is in the center while I invite to come up to the stage the people who will accompany me. I would now like to invite Ana Lucia Arellano, President of the International Disability Alliance, IDA. Thank you, Ana Lucia, and welcome. Thanks for being with us today. Just landed in Nigeria, Mr. Usharu, representing the Committee of People with Disabilities. In addition to them, from London, from his home in London, we have David Bainbridge, Executive Director of CBM Global, which is an organization of cooperation for development, the most important one in the world. And it's also based on an organization of people with blindness. I would like to ask David, who cannot join us in person, but who is joining us from London, to tell us more about his organization. For those people who are with us and do not speak Spanish, we will ask them the question in English and in Spanish.
Could you please explain a little bit about the organization, please?
Great. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you today. It is such a privilege to be part of this important event. So I'm the Executive Director for CBM Global, and CBM Global works alongside persons with disabilities in the world's poorest places to fight poverty and exclusion and transform lives. We work in over 20 countries. We invest in long-term, authentic partnership with the disability movement, and we seek to multiply our impact by delivering inclusive community-based programs, advocacy for national and global policy change, and providing inclusion advice to other organizations, all hand in hand with organizations of persons with disabilities. Thank you again.
Thank you, David. I'll be back with you in a minute. Voy a empezar por Ana Lucía, si me permites.
Now, I would like to ask Ana Lucia about participation, precisely the participation of organizations of people with disabilities in transforming society, which we know it's key, but you have many challenges ahead of you. Thank you, Susana. I am honored to be here, and I bring you the greetings of the World Movement of People with Disabilities. I would like to share the results of the World Survey of People with Disabilities regarding their own participation, precisely. We shared those results in 2019, so we're now carrying out the second version. But back then, we noticed that even though organizations of people with disabilities, which we called OPDs, have not been consulted, their participation is not significant enough, or sometimes is restricted to very specific areas or topics, or to different groups of people with disabilities. It is sometimes limited even by accessibility barriers, opportunity cost, or lack of financing, and this is an important issue. Nonetheless, there are also some good practices all over the world, but it is important to ensure action and significant participation of organizations with people with disabilities in a more ambitious scale, considering that cooperation is important for development, because without cooperation, all our efforts would be in vain. Now that we are running the second version of this World Survey of Participation, since we're present in this summit, I would like to take advantage of the opportunity to ask that this participation, this wide participation, becomes effective. We need our voice to be heard, because we must do advocacy. It is so important. Now, if I talk about all the actors of cooperation, I'd like to say that they should pay more attention to promoting a participative dialogue of people with disabilities and their organizations, the ones that represent them, and that dialogue should represent this effective participation, but under an equal footing, so that decisions are made with people with disabilities and with their organizations to give a response to this pandemic at a national, regional, and global level. It is also important to support leadership and participation of people with disabilities in all stages of planning, of disaster risk for the long, medium, and short terms. It is also important to promote inclusion of all people with disabilities and see that their common goals and opportunities for learning are shared from our movement. For governments, this is very important. And for us, it is very important to urge you to involve people with disabilities and OPDs, including women with disabilities and underrepresented groups. For example, the blind and the deaf, people with intellectual or social disabilities, migrants, women and girls with disabilities, indigenous people with disabilities. They should be involved in all decision-making levels to plan and organize for disasters and to prepare for them. They also should be present in all political consultations that are carried out and in programs to build back better as societies design strategies post-pandemic. Nothing about us without us. People with disabilities should be present, creating accessible and inclusive mechanisms to guarantee full participation. For our donors and partners, it's very important to develop such financing mechanisms that cover basic operational costs in order to strengthen our organizational capacity and training of staff, as well to finance projects, because without financing, it is really impossible for people with disabilities to go from being beneficiaries to be agents of change. All regions, countries should be included, and I want to particularly mention women and children with disabilities, because sometimes the cooperation of our international donors impose where they want to invest, even if we should be taken into consideration to highlight the priorities. I want to highlight the work of ONCE, because their work not only supports the movement of people with visual disabilities in Spain and all over the world, but they're investing in all the mobilization of people with all types of disabilities. This is why I'm here, because I want to bear good news and recognize the effort that the ONCE carries out. I also want to recognize how they have shown great solidarity with people with the blind and the deaf, which we celebrated yesterday. So it's not a coincidence that we're sitting here today, being present in this summit and bringing hope. I also want to thank ONCE's financial support. Thanks to that and to our movement and to all these efforts, the World Alliance for Disabilities has become stronger. This is why we're here, for the 1 billion people with disabilities that our organization represents. I would like to finish insisting that without financing, this is nothing but good intentions. Without financing, we cannot save lives. We cannot purchase vaccines. It's as simple as that. And we all know that including people with disabilities is an urgent matter. And that financing guarantees real participation of people with disabilities. This is what we need. Thank you, Lucia, for your list. We will keep it in mind.
Let me ask you something, but I'm going to translate in Spanish first, if that's okay with you. Lo que me gustaría preguntarle a Dan Lamy es...
What I would like to ask Dan Lamy is, how is this participation of the people with blindness?
During the past 12 years, the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities has been reviewing the implementation of the Convention in state parties, and has had the opportunity to review more than 90 country reports. Article 32 of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities occupies a very strong importance in the CRPD committee. The committee ensures that it provides concluding observations in that respect to all state parties regarding their obligations to provide a place in the development of such international cooperation agreement with state parties, and ensures that persons with disabilities and their representative organizations are taken along in any development program. Such observations have been issued in particular to small island states and middle-income countries because of its awareness that these countries suffer from diminished influence to long and middle-term development. The idea that of disability responsive cooperation, international cooperation has also been stressed through international development assistance. should be made conditional to ensure that disability concerns are included in, just like gender or climate concerns have in most countries been included. While the committee recognizes that CIS parties are given great recognition to international cooperation and its promotion, the committee is concerned in some states about the lack of effective consultations, participation of, and inclusion of persons with disabilities through their representative organizations in international cooperation programs, and that CIS parties do not sufficiently involve representative organizations of persons with disabilities in the planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of international cooperation activities, nor do they consult with organizations of persons with disabilities in the design of international cooperation projects and programs. The committee has recommended a variety of measures, including to ensure effective participation, inclusion, and consultation with persons with disabilities and their representative organizations in international cooperation programs, and that disability rights as enshrined in the convention are mainstreamed in the national implementation and monitoring of the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals. And these processes are undertaken in close cooperation and involvement with organizations of persons with disabilities. Thank you.
You are welcome. David, it's your turn now. Le voy a preguntar a David,
I'm going to ask David, thinking about your organization, what could you tell people with visual disabilities to be able to join to cooperation, right, for development and be included?
Associations of blind people, for them to be able to join that cooperation work and be included in a transversal way.
Great, thank you for the question. So I think there is so much that international NGOs such as CBM Global need to change in order to work effectively with organizations of persons with disabilities to help them access resources and work in partnership. What we've seen in the past is frustration that international NGOs do not work closely enough with organizations of persons with disabilities to ensure effective, inclusive development and humanitarian action. And the process of what is called localization, the flow of funding through to local organizations, has been very slow. And the criticism is justified. I think international NGOs often in the past might have taken an add-on exercise, ticking a box to meet donor requirements in showing that they're working with OPDs. But we know that in CRPD, Article 32 requires this collaboration with respect to development, and Article 11 says the same for humanitarian response. So we really need a new partnership approach, the way we can work together with mutually agreed principles of partnership so that international NGOs working with OPDs aren't instrumentalizing their work for their own gain, but instead this is a partnership based on achieving the shared strategic objectives of both organizations, working in a mutual, supportive, collaborative way, and bringing complementary expertise and specialisms to the table. I think we'll see a shift in funding flows, because in the old model, funding would go to an international NGO, often in a lead role, and that international NGO would disperse portions of funding to local partner organizations, OPDs. That model will shift going forward, and we can expect to see a growing emphasis on direct funding of local organizations, including OPDs, by international donors. And that means the role of the international NGO is definitely going to shift into more of a support role. Now, for that to be achieved, capacity is often flagged by OPDs as a key constraint, especially for more recently established organizations or those for underrepresented groups. So this needs to be a priority for INGOs, making sure that there is investment into capacity support for OPD partners, and yet it remains significantly underfunded at this time. This is certainly a priority for CBM Global, where we are placing partnership with the disability movement as a core commitment across all areas of our work, whether implementing community programs or advocacy or any other area of work. And when we think about our measures of success as CBM Global, we're not only going to be asking what impact we have achieved through the development and humanitarian programs that we undertake in partnership with OPDs, but we'll be asking in what ways have OPDs been supported and strengthened as sustainable organizations so that they can fulfill their mandate on an ongoing basis. That's how I see our role changing to ensure we work effectively with OPDs going forward. Thank you.
So the thing here, gracias. The thing here is hablar también de por ejemplo, de la accesibilidad. Hay tantísimos temas a debatir.
So talking about accessibility, and so many of the things we have to debate could be the accessibility of blind people to books. I'm referring to the Marrakech Treaty, which in only 10 years, 700,000 titles of the Library of Alexandria are now accessible without copyrights, and this has been possible thanks to countries like Spain that has opened its digital library with thousands of books, and many other countries are working under the umbrella of the Intellectual Property Organization. Mr. Darental has wanted to send a message to us from his organization in Geneva, but the message is clear: more accessibility, more books, more inclusion.
Your Majesty, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to address the opening session of the World Blindness Summit, General Assembly Madrid, organized by the World Blind Union, the International Council for Education of People with Visual Impairment, and the Organization of Spanish Blind Persons. The Marrakech Treaty entered into force 5 years ago. Since then, it has become WIPO's fastest growing treaty, covering 105 countries worldwide and expanding learning, education, and entertainment possibilities for over 250 million people who are blind and visually impaired around the world. For us at WIPO, the real power of the Marrakech Treaty lies in the people it has reached and the lives it has improved in all corners of the world. Many of you participating in today's summit know this better than I or anyone else can express. It is your lived experience and your daily lives. The World Blind Union estimates that 90% of children who are blind in developing or least developed countries do not go to school. One of the reasons for this is that books in accessible formats are simply not available to them. This is a tragedy of deep and long-lasting consequences. Indeed, for too long, a lack of access to books and learning materials imposed a dark glass ceiling on blind and visually impaired people. I'm therefore heartened to see that in just a few short years, the Marrakech Treaty has begun to reverse some of these trends, hopefully improving lives, chances, furthering careers, and making a real difference to people around the world. At the institutional level, the Marrakech Treaty shows that remarkable impact that is created when partnerships are formed through governments, civil society, and commercial organizations with the ultimate objective of benefiting individuals and society as a whole. Together, we have brought the Marrakech Treaty alive, turning its legal provisions into something that has real impact on people's lives. I would be remiss if I did not mention the pioneering role played by the World Blind Union, ICVVI, and ONCE in ensuring that the Marrakech Treaty was adopted in 2013. It is deeply encouraging to see that your support of the treaty has only strengthened in the years since. Governments that ratify the Marrakech Treaty must ensure that two main principles are implemented. First, that books can be produced in accessible formats such as Braille, audio, or e-text. And second, that these accessible books can then be freely exchanged across borders. But in order for blind and other persons with print disabilities to reap the full benefits of the Marrakech Treaty, we also need solutions to make books available in special formats. That's where WIPO's Accessible Books Consortium comes in. The ABC is a public-private partnership which seeks to implement the Marrakesh Treaty objectives at a practical level. We're proud to note that the World Blind Union, ICVI, and UNSE are all partners of the Accessible Books Consortium. The ABC Global Book Service is the second largest collection of accessible titles in the world, with a global catalog of more than 630,000 books in accessible formats, including UNSE's collection of approximately 45,000 high-quality titles in Spanish. These titles are all freely available for cross-border exchange for the benefit of people who are print disabled. I hope that we can continue to work together to ensure universal membership of the Marrakesh Treaty and develop more solutions like the ABC and inclusive publishing that help us eradicate the book famine. If I may, I would like to close by sharing a story that captures the power of accessible books. In 2003, a young man, Mr. Nilesh Kumar Keshri, lost his sight. Nilesh's dream was to join the Indian Civil Service, which requires that he pass the famously challenging Civil Services Exam, or CSE. Each year, approximately 1 million applicants compete for fewer than 1,000 vacancies, making the CSE one of the toughest entry tests in the world. Unfortunately, with limited access to the required reading materials, Nilesh's dream proved tantalizingly out of reach. 4 times he entered into the CSE, 4 times he did not succeed. But on his 5th attempt, something changed. Nilesh was able to use Daisy books, screen reading software, and a talking smartphone to prepare. Suddenly, he had the support he had been searching for. Nilesh sat for the exam once again. This time, buoyed by the support of accessible materials, he placed within the top 1% of applicants and entered the Indian Civil Service. 4 years on, he's now an assistant commissioner with the Indian Revenue Service. As more countries embrace the Marrakesh Treaty, we hope that there'll be many more inspiring stories like Nilesh's. And I know that many of you in this audience today will have your own personal testimony about what the treaty means to you. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish all of you an informative and enjoyable Congress. I would like to leave you with a few parting words from Nilesh, which capture the essence of what the Marrakesh Treaty aims to achieve. I now believe that nothing is impossible. Thank you very much.
Desde luego que nada es imposible, qué importante es la accesibilidad de las personas.
Of course, nothing is impossible. How important it is for blind people to access books, because only 5% are accessible now.
I'm going to ask about recommendations. What are the recommendations for governments so that they are accept?
Thank you very much. International cooperation cuts across all aspects of life. And as such, we cannot single out one area and say that it is the one to be addressed by international cooperation. For instance, many countries in the developing world receive development aid in the fields of education, health, economic stimulant or growth, and even employment, etc. So for this reason, these areas of concerns benefit from international cooperation, and this strengthens the recommendations that disability rights across board need to be impacted by international cooperation, whether in the area of development aid, technology, or economic exchange. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Y Ana Lucía, en esta línea y además en estos momentos vamos a hablar de reivindicaciones.
Okay, let's talk about the claims. What are the claims of movement of people with disabilities? Well, in general terms, we insist on the fact that we need to achieve full participation of people with disabilities through their OPDs. We've had a lot of progress on this way, and we've seen that investing significantly in empowering these people at all levels and everywhere globally is most important and is of the essence. in advocacy. Much has been done in order to promote programs throughout the year, especially in the movement of people with disability. We have 8 global organizations, 6 regional organizations globally. We have the Worldwide Union, for example, and that's also a reason why we are here today, in order to showcase this work we do together, where we are implementing the guidelines of the International Convention on People with Disability, also other guidelines within the framework of the UN and other commitments that world leaders have decided to take on. But we need to develop the capabilities of disabled people's organizations. Now, much has been done, but there are also lots of challenges, and we are seeing today a new start, how the world needs to guarantee precisely these meaningful participation. When we talk about the OPDs in countries that are still under development, we realize that it is only one component of inclusive development. If we see this under this angle, people with disabilities need to be part of all the stages in the project cycle: design, implementation, monitoring, assessment, governance. Sometimes people with disabilities end up being mere recipients and beneficiaries of these programs, while they should be actors. So we really understand this process also as a result. So inclusive participation and meaningful participation of people with disabilities for us is a collective commitment and an individual responsibility of each and every one of the organizations that are active in this field of development. And we do need to understand what this means. We have this World Survey on the involvement of people with disabilities. And we've realized that programs and policies in the field of development have certain parameters to make an assessment ex post, and that are necessary in order to make Article 4.3 of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities to come to its full potential. Also participating, for example, in meetings. And then we need to realize what development really means. It means change. And we mean inclusive change in terms of development. And that's our vision, that we together do implement the strategies that really make a change in the world of these persons with disabilities, at the workplace, at home, in rural areas, in the cities, everywhere. And in this pandemic, we've realized that this is something that was very much needed already yesterday. It should have started yesterday to come to fruition today, because unfortunately, some people with disabilities will not have a tomorrow, but there's still hope. And that's why we are here. We are committed to keep working together and fighting against discrimination, inequality. We will not cede a single inch and insist on this change in a world that is full of challenges, that's true, but also full of opportunities. We do really think that with this Congress, we will be able to take stock of the situation of people with visual disabilities worldwide, but we will also be able to bring the governments to commit to this end. And I would like to invite you to Norway for the year 2022. We will still be making our voice heard and hopefully implement the good practices as we've seen showcased here in space. So thank you very much, and the best of luck to you all. So thank you so much for the invitation, point taken, and thank you also for this message of hope. I will be asking about the role of organizations of persons with disability.
Great, thank you for the question. So from our experience as CBM Global, we see enormous opportunity and priority for persons with disabilities and organizations of persons with disabilities to be key advisory bodies in promoting social inclusion. And it's exciting to see around the world the number of organizations that are now committed to achieving inclusion of persons with disabilities within their own policies and in their programs. We see across the United Nations the rollout of their disability strategy. We see a number of government donors making this a priority, that they want to ensure disability inclusive development work, humanitarian action, and across humanitarian actors, many commitments toward inclusive humanitarian response. So there's some positive trends across the sector of development and humanitarian work toward disability inclusion. In CBM Global, we've developed a very strong model of delivering inclusion advice to other organizations through what we call our Inclusion Advisory Group. And we provide a range of advice to UN organizations and others who want to ensure their own policies and programs are fully inclusive of persons with disabilities. And a current example is a partnership we have between CBM Global and the World Blind Union through a high-level memorandum of understanding that we've signed together, committing to collaborate in all areas of work. And that includes working with the World Health Organization, Mental Health Department, to provide inclusion and accessibility expertise to that department. We have now a statement of approach for CBM Global outlining how we will work with the disability movement, working with persons with disabilities and their representative organizations in this advisory work. And we have a clear position that no advisory work should ever be undertaken by an international NGO without persons with disabilities and OPDs supporting its delivery. So in summary, there is massive opportunity. It's a high priority going forward to ensure people with disabilities and OPDs work across the development and humanitarian community to ensure other organizations are promoting inclusion and ensuring disability inclusion within all of their policies and their programs. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Gracias, David. Nos quedamos con esa idea de
Thank you, David. We keep this idea looking into the future. And thus, I would like, in conclusion, thank you, Ana Lucia Arellano from the IDA, Mr. Umaru Basharu, representative of the UN for the rights of persons with disabilities, and also thank you to David Bainbridge from CBN Global. Thanks so much for sharing your time and insights with us today. And now we'll be hearing yet another opinion related with this topic. We'll be listening to the Commissioner.
Summit. In March, the European Commission adopted the strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities to improve the lives of persons with disabilities in the EU and beyond in the coming decade. The strategy turns our commitment to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities into further action. It also contributes to implementing the European Pillar of Social Rights to ensure fairness in the green and digital transition and in the recovery. It takes into account the diversity of disability and of barriers at the intersection of forms of discrimination. The strategy will support policy developments through EU action that can bring the most added value in key areas such as accessibility, free movement, independent living, and employment. And it will support promoting the rights of persons with disabilities globally. The objectives of this strategy can only be reached through coordinated action at national and European level. We attach great importance to accessibility because it is an enabler of participation, autonomy, and equality. As you well know, accessibility is not only about buildings, transport, and infrastructure. Accessible work, applications, school books, voting ballots, movies, newspapers, and websites are equally important to ensure that visually impaired people can live independently and fully enjoy their rights. We have already come a long way with dedicated instruments to advance in this area. In 2019, the EU adopted the landmark European Accessibility Act. It requires that products and services such as phones, e-books, and banking services are accessible. And it is now being turned into national law across the EU. The new strategy will build on these achievements. Next year, we will launch the European Resource Centre Accessible EU. It will make accessibility policies across the EU more coherent and help access knowledge and mutual exchange. To support independent living and inclusion in the community, we will issue guidance to EU member states and present a European quality framework for social services of excellence. Closely related to independent living is employment. A job is the best way to ensure autonomy and social inclusion. Next year, we will present a package to improve the labor market outcomes of persons with disabilities. The Commission also calls on member states to establish targets to increase the employment rate of persons with disabilities. As a pathway to employment, we will encourage accessible and inclusive education. The strategy also addresses equal access and non-discrimination on many other fronts, from access to justice to healthcare. And the EU will continue to promote the rights of persons with disabilities beyond its borders. Dear participants, today's event is at the heart of the progress made so far in recognizing the rights and needs of blind people across the world. The Commission strongly believes in and supports the contribution of organizations of persons with disabilities, such as the European Blind Union, a regional member of the World Blind Union. We are here today to contribute to this worldwide debate and to learn from you. With our joint efforts, we will advance towards building a union of equality and a world of equality. I thank you.
Pues así hemos llegado al final, pero vamos a seguir antes de acabar con dos invitados muy especiales. Ellos son el futuro de las personas ciegas. Ellos demuestran cada día con su esfuerzo que la inclusión es posible.
Os voy a presentar, porque van a compartir el escenario con nosotros, a Hugo, que tiene 13 años, y a Marlene, que tienen 16, y además tienen algo que decirnos. Adelante, chicos.
Hola a todos.
Please go ahead. Hello, I'm Hugo. I'm 13 years old. I'm Marlene. I'm 16 years old. Both of us want to be the voice of many boys and girls that are blind in the world. We want to say clearly what we want for our future. We, blind people of the world, are joining forces in order to remind you that we just want to be together with our friends and make headway with them. And there are so many kids in the world that don't have access to education that is key for our future. The university means an opportunity for life in equality as any other citizen. And that is why today we want to say loud and clear that we don't need to be included anywhere. We already are part of society. And we want to be treated like you would treat anybody else in society. We want to share the future of our friends, of our neighbors, just as anyone else. And from Madrid, we want to send a message of home. The future holds promise. We want to be people with the same rights. We want to become what we always endeavored to become. And we want to be very well understood everywhere. We want to be equal. That's a very well-deserved applause. Well, please stay with us on stage because this is drawing to a close. The inauguration session of the World Blindness Summit Madrid 2021, presided over by Her Majesty the Queen. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Susana, for sharing with us such an important moment. And as many blind people in Spain say in their workplace, thank you so much and good luck.